Good evening. I'm Monty Bowen. The Fairbanks 4 post-conviction relief trial just wrapped up after over 5 weeks of testimony. The 4 men convicted of murdering Jonathan Hartman 18 years ago have maintained their innocence. At the center of the case is convicted murderer Bill Holmes. One of the key testimonies during the hearings came from Holmes, who confessed to being involved in the murder of Hartman that evening. KTVF's Stephanie Woodard had the opportunity to sit down with Bill Holmes for the first time ever on camera to speak about why he came forward, the conspiracy, and the murders that landed him in prison with a double life sentence. Here's Stephanie Woodard with the story.
For the first time ever on camera, Bill Holmes sat down with me. He's the man at the center of the Fairbanks 4 post-conviction relief case after he penned a confession that names himself and others as the actual assailants in the '97 John Hartman murder. Holmes began his interview by acknowledging he didn't start off as a hardened murderer.
You would say, you would acknowledge that like you told me you went to school, you weren't the kid that skipped school and smoked cigarettes or anything like that. So is that's how you were?
Yeah, that's how it was. Going to Lathrop, it was all about fun, hooking up with girls, I was very jovial. I wasn't violent or angry or nothing like that. It was all about sports until I started smoking weed. And then once I started smoking weed, that's when I began to slowly change. And, I didn't graduate on time. And all those things, I believe, affected me to where I started just going down a dark road.
Take me down that dark road. How did you get there?
Well, for me, some people may not look at weed as, they say it's a gateway drug, but for me, weed was the beginning of my downfall. I started hanging around a different crowd once I started smoking weed. I started, that was really, I started hanging around a different crowd. I got introduced to the drug world. I began to sell weed. So at the same time, it was like I was juggling 2 different worlds. On one hand, I had kids at a young age. I had my kids. I love my kids, but I began to be addicted to weed. So initially, it was just I would do anything to provide for my weed habit, and it began to lead into robbing people, stealing from people, burglarizing houses, and that's how I began to go down that road, and then it just got worse and worse.
But the money in it, is that kind of something? Tell me about that, because you said provide for your habit, but were you also providing for your family? Like what was that situation?
Well, in the beginning, it was just about getting high off marijuana. Then eventually, probably once I turned like 19 or 20, then it began about trying to provide for my family or just provide for the lifestyle. So it just began. It wasn't until I started delving into selling cocaine that things really spiraled out of control. But around 2001, when I started selling cocaine, that's when I just upped the ante, because I know in that world that, if either you got to be willing to protect yourself or people are going to prey on you. So I began robbing people, robbing other drug dealers. Just if anybody crossed me or had a problem with what I was doing, then I was always willing to take it to the max. And even though up to that point I hadn't killed anybody, I think most people knew that I was willing to use my gun. So once I entered the dope game, it just got worse. Well, back in the day, I was very manipulative. A lot of people, they knew the good side of me, and I would use that against people. I would gain their trust, then I would rob them or steal from them and things like that. So it's a lot of people out there that they don't really probably understand how I ended up here, because the Bill they knew was a person that was kind, loving, friendly, and that was a part of me. But once I got involved in drug dealing, the mentality I had was that in order to be on top in the drug game, you had to be the most ruthless. So I chose to be, instead of being the prey, I chose to be the predator, and I took that to the max.
Holmes says he briefly left Alaska, and when he came back, all bets were off.
When I came back, I began to sell cocaine. I robbed somebody, and in that house, I thought there was only weed, but there ended up being cocaine. And from there, I just started selling cocaine. And once I started selling cocaine, man, it just took me into another world. So I was just robbing people. I was making a lot more money. I began to be a lot more flashier, and I just think it just all went to my head. I stopped caring about, to me, when you go down that dark road, it makes you more callous. So I stopped caring about friends. I started robbing friends, and I just stopped caring. And that's, to me, once you go down that road, that's what happens to you. You start becoming more and more immune to the things you're doing.
I want to touch, we're going to come to the Fairbanks 4, obviously, but one of the things that seems to be the crux of this state, right, is, of their case, is you were put up on trial for killing 2 people. And they keep pressuring you, asking you, you know, why didn't you use the information that we'll get into, what you know, against the other people in that case to get you a lesser sentence.
Next, Holmes addressed for the first time the murders that he is serving a double life sentence for. It was hatched out of a plot between him and Jason Wallace to kill Fairbanks man Hakeem Bryant and Chris Martin.
A lot of people are probably wondering what happened. As far as me and Hakeem, we were both heavily into the drug game. We eventually became somewhat of partners, and basically there was an incident that took place where he lost a lot of cocaine, and he ended up having less money than me, let's just say it. So there was a lot of, I heard he was talking about me behind my back, and I held a lot of resentments for that anger. I felt like he double-crossed me. So when I did meet up with Jason Wallace, that's when we put together the plan to rob Hakeem. So Christopher Martin, he really had nothing to do with it. He was just somebody where I wasn't gonna leave any witnesses, but that's how I got to a place where I could murder somebody, was because it was a lot of resentments and anger, and I felt like he betrayed my trust. So that's how I got to that place.
Take me to your mentality that day. What is it like for you to pull that trigger?
Well, honestly, when I met back up with Jason Wallace in 2002, it was like me and him were like dynamite. I don't believe I would ever fully got to that place without him, but when we met back up and he was crazy, by then I was crazy. So it was like we put together this plan, but as far as me, what I did in California, I mean, I pumped myself up. Once I was down there, I did feel like, well, we're in this together. He's expecting me to take care of these guys and get the money, and I'm expecting him to make sure that nobody's able to say that I came on the trip. So I think once I left Alaska, it was like I felt like, man, I gotta do it. You know, we boys, me and him was tight. So I looked at it like he was counting on me. I said I was gonna do it. So yeah, I just pumped myself up. Before I did it, I really just like looked in the mirror like, man, I'm about to do this. And things just lined up to where it just so happened that night, I was actually driving, and when Christopher Martin asked me to drive, because he had drove all the way from Washington to California, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this. And we stopped at a rest stop. When I came out, he was in the back seat, and that was like his way of telling me to drive. So I thought, man, this ain't gonna happen, because if we go all the way to California, I'm not gonna do it. So as we were driving, probably about 45 minutes, he said, pull over, he had to use the bathroom. And when we pulled over, he got out and used the bathroom. Then I got out and used the bathroom. And then he just went and sat in the front seat because he said I was driving too slow. And that's when I got in the back seat and I shot Hakeem in the back of the head first, one shot. And then I shot Chris till he stopped. He hollered when I shot Hakeem, and I just kept shooting him until he stopped hollering.
In the head, Hakeem was in the driver's seat and the other guy was in the passenger seat?
No, Hakeem was in the passenger seat. I sat right behind him as I was getting in, and I didn't shut my door. I just put the gun in the back of the headrest and shot him.
And so then what? You're alone in the car.
No, I pulled Christopher Martin out the car and just left him on the side of the road, and then I drove probably like a quarter or half a mile with Hakeem sitting right there, and then I pulled him out the car and I drove and stopped at a hotel for about 30, 45 minutes, and I turned around and came back all the way to Washington. And
With Hakeem in the car?
No. I had already pulled him out the car. But yeah, then I called Michonne Wallace, who came and picked me up and was just, Jason didn't tell her what we were doing, but he told her to do whatever I said.
Have you ever thought about like Hakeem's family?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. I've thought about King's family. I've thought about his wife. Not very many people speak about her because she didn't live in Fairbanks, and I don't think she wanted anything to do with it outside of, I remember her contacting the newspaper and telling them that Tika wasn't his girl or his wife, she was, but I knew them. I knew his wife. I went to school with her. So me and her were friends. So I always just think about the fact that, you know, for her to know me and to think that I could do this to her husband and somebody else I knew, I know it's crushed her, and she don't even. I remember seeing somewhere where the police asked her, "Do you know Bill Holmes?" and she said no. And I felt like even though she knew me, in her mind she's thinking, I don't even know that guy.
Is this the first time that you've talked about Hakeem and stuff? Like that when you told me that?
This is the first time I've ever admitted to anybody that I killed them. I ain't never admitted that to nobody.
You didn't admit that in trial?
Absolutely not.
Next, Holmes addressed the Fairbanks 4 case, to which he's the center of, after penning a confession that alleged it was him and his group of friends who were responsible for the 1997 murder of Fairbanks teen John Hartman.
Is there any question that those 4 guys killed John Hartman in your mind?
No, there's no doubt in my mind. The people responsible for John Hartman losing his life is the 5 guys that I mentioned, including me. The person that killed John Hartman is Jason Wallace. He stomped him out. He told me he stomped him out. He knows it. Marquez knows it. Shelmar Johnson knows it. And Rashawn Brown knows it. And I know it. Plain as that. When I was in the underworld, to me, I made my own rules. I never was under anybody. I never was led by anybody. I never was in gangs because I always looked at that as being weak. So for me, I made my own rules and I did what I wanted to do. And even now, it doesn't bother me. People in that world, I'll be labeled a snitch and all of this, but I got the same mentality as now that I'm trying to do something right, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I don't care what people think about it. I'm gonna do what's right. And I personally believe that by every day that God gives me the breath to live another day, I still, even in here, have choices between doing right or doing wrong. And today I'm just choosing to do what's right.
Holmes has implicated Jason Wallace, the man involved in the multi-state drug murder plot that landed them both in prison for multiple murders. In the 5-week trial, Wallace finally took to the stand under a blanket of immunity, and pleading the fifth, he denied any involvement in the brutal beating that left the 15-year-old dead.
I did not kill John Hartman, or was I ever involved in the killing of John Hartman?
I'm assuming because maybe he has hopes of getting out one day, or he doesn't want to be implicated in this, but to me, the irony is that when he got on the stand and testified against me, he spoke about wanting to get all these things off his chest, having a peace of mind, and he even went so far as to look at me in trial and say that I hope that Bill will one day have this peace and have this peace of mind that I have today. And to me, the irony in that is, well, I do have that peace of mind now, and that's why I'm coming forward and telling the truth and being honest, because I do believe the truth will set you free. So I just believe that the truth needs to be told. And it may seem a little weird to people, but I'm not here for the Fairbanks 4 or for Jason. I'm just here really for myself, between the commitment I made between me and God, and that's it. So I've always said that, I hope it helps them guys, but I'm just here to tell the truth, and whatever comes out of that, I'm already cool with that.
The state in their arguments say Holmes isn't credible because he never used this information in his double murder trial in which he was convicted, and others have said they believe he stands to gain something from coming forward.
He's got nothing to lose, so they're gonna take care of him on his books and this and that. What would you say to those people? Have you ever received money from them?
The Fairbanks 4 has never offered me anything. Marvin said what he said in his letter, but he's never, I didn't know what he meant by that. I never knew about a reward. They've never offered me the reward. They've never told me I'm gonna get the reward. I just heard that from the cold case detectives that there was a reward, but no one's contacted me that has to do with the Fairbanks Ford and Native community outside of that one letter from Marvin. No one's offered me anything, and I haven't received a dime, and I don't intend to or look forward to receiving a dime or anything.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to believe that you're just doing the right thing?
Well, I mean, there's a big misconception. I mean, people just look at the fact that, hey, I was involved in a double murder and that's it. They just believe that that's it, that's all he is. He's nobody, he's nothing, he don't believe anything he says, and so on and so forth. So I think that most people, unless they have a family member in prison or know somebody that's locked up or are directly involved, most people, have their own view of prison and all of that.
Holmes has never addressed the public with any of this information, but prior to sitting down, he made it clear that he wanted to address a certain group of people.
What would you say to them?
I'd first like to start with the Hartman family, and I like to tell them that, it's very hard for me to even address them because I'm pretty sure they don't want to hear anything from me. But I still want to apologize to them for my role and responsibility and their son or brother or whoever he was to them to lose his life senselessly like that. And I just want to tell them that any anger or resentments or need for justice that they may feel should not be directed towards the Fairbanks Ford. It should be directed towards us. And I stand here today, or I sit here today, and I tell them with every fiber in my being that the person that killed John Hartman was Jason Wallace. And to the Fairbanks Ford, I want to apologize to them as well because they can't get back this 18 years that they've lost while being in prison. And I know what it's like to be in prison. I know the journey that they've been on behind these brick walls. The part I can't vouch that I know is how to go through all of this and be innocent. So to them, I want to apologize to them for my responsibility and role in any way that they've lost these 18 years of their lives. I'd like to apologize to their mothers and fathers in the Native community. And I remember reading in a paper that one of their moms talked about because of the proceedings that she was losing hope. And I just hope in some way, form, or fashion that she continues to keep hope and just continue to believe in her son's innocence. And I want them to know that no matter what, I'm gonna be in their corner no matter how this turn out. And it don't matter how many trips I gotta take up here or how many times I gotta get on the stand, I'm gonna see this thing through. And I just apologize to them and the whole Native community for them boys having to be looked at like they committed this heinous crime, because if don't nobody else know, I know that they didn't do this. In my deposition, anything that pertained to my case in California, I pleaded the fifth. And it wasn't until October the 4th that I made my mind up that whatever Ms. Bachman asked me, I was gonna answer it. Because in my deposition, that's all she asked. She asked 90% about that and very little about the Fairbanks Ford. So for me, me coming forward, admitting that I committed these crimes, this is gonna be huge for my mom, for my family, for my children. So that's what I cared about with doing that, but I'm doing it anyways because I don't want, when I raised my hand, I said I would tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's what I decided to do, as much as it's gonna hurt the people that I love. But I just hope that people will at least give it some thought that, man, why would he admit to all of this and say all of this about himself? There must be some truth to what he's saying about this, because at the end of the day, it's true. They need to let them guys out of here. They didn't do it. It's unfortunate of people it may affect, but they didn't do it. Simple as that.
The other man implicated by Bill Holmes, Jason Wallace, testified during the post-conviction relief trial that he had no involvement in the murder of John Hartman. It's now up to Judge Paul Lyle, who will decide whether Holmes's confession is truthful or not. That decision is expected to come later next year.
We are here to evaluate whether a certain standard of proof has been met.
4 men have been in prison since they were boys, about half their lives. They missed the births and deaths and family. They missed the chance to see their own children grow up, and we're told that they should be kept there. Why? Well, to uphold the verdicts of jurors who had never heard of Holmes or Wallace or the true state of Arlo Olson's tortured path to the truth that he finally told.
It's going to take a long time, and it's going to be a painstaking process. I don't want you to think, if I don't meet the 6-month deadline, that I haven't been working on it. And I don't want you to think that I will rush to meet the 6-month deadline or be concerned about how I'm going to get my own bills paid if I don't meet the 6-month deadline. The court is prepared to deal with that.
KTVF will continue to cover any developments. From all of us here at KTVF Channel 11, thanks for watching.